Dave here at Prog Warts. Thank you for joining me. Well, 2023 is over. 2024 has begun officially. Happy New Year to everybody out there watching. Appreciate your time. And I figured it was a good time, 5 months into this little experiment, to take stock, take a look at what's going on, take a look at what's going to happen, and tell you folks a little bit about this guy, this Prog dude that you have tuned in so graciously to see over the last several months. Give you a little idea of where I come from and what has led to everything you see and hear with Bleeding Edge and Bleeding Edge interviews. I'll keep it short because I know maybe nobody cares, but nonetheless, just a few things to talk about with folks for a moment. So you may be wondering, how does a channel dedicated to progressive rock end up with a name like Bleeding Edge? And where does all this come from? And Proggy, the Progbot, my mascot and logo? Well, it goes back at this point in time approximately 4 years. And around that time, I had been invited to do some production work. Station IDs, and drops, and promos, and things like that for an online station called Toxic Radio. Formerly, still sort of semi-currently at toxicradio.net. You can still find it there, but it doesn't broadcast anymore. It's a station that was all metal and hard rock, hair metal kind of stuff and all that. And so very, very different, obviously, than what I'm doing now. Well, I came in, I did some production, did some nice work. I was pretty pleased with what I had done, as was the owner and the program director. They were very thrilled with the work I did, and therefore gave me the nickname Super Dave, which was cool. You know, I appreciated the compliment. I appreciated them giving me a nickname in appreciation of my work. At the same time, it did sound like a guy, a former comedian slash actor slash whatever, who did this shtick where he was playing a daredevil and always crashing stuff. So, without wanting to steal his name, it was modified to Super Dave, because I'm fly like that. Sorry. Anyway, that's where that comes from. And that was gifted to me by Toxic Mike and the Fishman at Toxic Radio. So, fast forward about 6 months or so into mid-2020. Of course, by then the pandemic's hit and all that crap. We're mostly on lockdown, but some of us are able to get together. And the station was running. Hey, we had a full studio and all that kind of stuff. And at that time, I had come up with an idea for a show that I wanted to do on the air. And they supported me in doing it. And that show was Bleeding Edge, debuted July 11th, 2020. And it was a program, as you would guess, that was focused on playing progressive and alternative metal. Now remember, the overall station format was metal and hard rock. So, in keeping in tune with the station's overall tone and the palette as far as the music, I focused on the progressive and alternative side of metal. Metal pushing the boundaries, pushing outside the norms of where you would expect to hear metal and hard rock. So everything had a bit more of an edge. And the name Bleeding Edge was chosen to fit in with that a bit. It was evocative of things that were metal and horns and all that stuff. So that's what it was meant to be, and managed to get a hold of myself a very nice little robot given the horns, metal, futuristic, thinking forward, so to speak, and all that kind of stuff. And therefore, that's where Proggy the Progbot comes from, my mascot and my logo. Now, the show broadcasted on Saturday, late afternoon, early evening, right ahead of the Heavy Metal Happy Hour, which was the Fishman's show that had been running for years and years. I'm not sure if I know exactly how many years, but I think it was like 8, 9, or 10 years at that point. So it's a little bit of a switch up, but it did give me the opportunity to develop a show intro using Monty Python's old line about, and now for something completely different. So it was definitely a switch from the middle of the hair metal weekend, bang, all of a sudden it's prog and alt metal And then bang, we're back to hair metal again with the heavy metal happy hour. But it was cool. Enjoyed it. Loved every minute of it. It was always a great time. And just hanging out with those guys was fun too. To this day, the sign off I give at the end of my podcasts and my videos, this is Super Dave signing off, that is taken from the radio show. That was how I signed off every episode of the radio show, as I was handing it off to the Fishman. So that's where I get that. That's why I do that. And I've continued that tradition. Then we fast forward a bit, 6 months or more into that. 2021 starts. Toxic Mike, the owner of the station, challenged me and said, all right, Dave, I want you to expand what you're doing with the show and do a little bit of what Fishman does. I want to see if you can start getting some of the artists you played in for interviews. Cool. I was absolutely up for that. I wasn't sure because it's not something I had done prior to that, but I knew it would be an interesting adventure, and I had to kind of figure out from scratch on my own how to start making the connections I needed in order to do this. Well, as it worked out, by luck, after a few months, I managed to hit the right connection, the right place, right time, and I landed my first interview. And I got to say, as far as a first interview goes in the world of progressive metal, it's hard to do bigger than Haken. My jaw hit the floor that I landed my first interview with Charlie Griffiths and Ray Hearn of Haken, one of the biggest bands out there even then for progressive metal, and they're even bigger now since. So that was awesome. It was a great time. It was also not without incident. In that first interview using Zoom, I don't know what happened, but we suddenly hit a technical glitch, and it was the oddest thing ever. But for some reason, a key on the keyboard got stuck. I hadn't touched it. Nobody had touched it. Nobody was in the room but me. Nobody was near it. Didn't need to use it. But suddenly that keyboard decided that what we needed at that moment was a lot of T's, a lot of letter T's. And that's the button that got stuck. And that's the button that kept taking my volume down to silence so they couldn't hear me. And that's the button I couldn't get to stop doing that. So it eventually required a complete system reboot. And overall, by the time the reboot was done and the computer was back on, it was an older computer that we used for the Zoom, and it was very slow. And then we had to get reconnected. I think it was about 15 minutes. God bless them. I come back 15 minutes later, that Zoom meeting, Charlie and Ray are still there. That's how awesome those guys were. They were still there. They waited all that time for me to get back and running again. And we finished it all up. And Charlie's been back 3 times. Ray's been back once. I've had Ross from Haken 3 times himself. I got to say, I love the guys at Haken. The lads of Haken are amazing people. And they've been nothing but kind to me over the years. So very thankful for them. Thank you guys. And, just happy for Jake, my contact, who managed to set all that up for me. He's been good to me as well. So there we go. Since that time, we've gotten up to over 40 episodes of the podcast. Now, there have been a few recently that were not interviews, but most of those, by far, are interviews. And I've been lucky enough over all that time to have interviewed people from across the globe, the UK, Canada, Australia, Poland, Norway, and the US, of course. I've been able to talk to people that I've admired for decades, like Ian Crichton of Saga and Steve Rothery of Marillion, as well as make some new friends with up-and-comers like Diana and Moonhead of Trope, as well as not even quite a newcomer, but somebody who's been around for a long time, but he's new to Prog, and that's Jason Beeler, who's been on a couple of times, Cody Lee Ford of Sowen, and it's been an amazing thing. And I'm thoroughly enjoying all that, and I just want to continue to keep doing it and really work towards filling out my bucket list. My bucket list, of course, would include Steven Wilson, Mike Portnoy. I've got Neil Morse. That was one bucket list. And maybe somebody else from Dream Theater. Of course, that's Mike Portnoy now. I've had Mike Mangini. So, and there are a few of the old bucket list people. Steve Howe, Steve Hackett, anybody from Yes or Genesis, really. Robert Fripp from King Crimson. all those people will be amazing things to accomplish by talking to them. So we'll hope that comes down the road. We will see. And of course, those of you watching this on YouTube know I now have a YouTube channel, which only was started a few months ago. We are 5 months in. So it is new and, God willing, growing. So that's the newest experiment to see how many other people I can reach. And of course, also in there, I added The Expanse because I missed the radio part of Toxic Radio. And The Expanse is filling in for that a bit. I have not worked my way into finding time for a regular live show yet, but that may be something in the future. We will see. I would like to get back to actually a live version of Bleeding Edge. See what happens there. But speaking of the future, as we sit here and we take stock of 2023 and I think back to what an interesting year it's been and what an amazing year for progressive-oriented modern music, whether it's rock or metal or whatever, and the various bands that I've discovered along the way, and keep finding out there's still always more to discover. Admittedly, I'm not someone like Scott. He knows who he is. He's out there and have been knee-deep in this stuff going back into the 70s. I've known a lot of it over that time, but I've never been exclusive to one genre. This is just my favorite genre. And it's been one of those things where the way life has taken me over the years and the way things were back in the day, it wasn't always easy to find stuff that was niche, that was obscure. Streaming fixed a lot of that. Downloading helped. Not that I ever downloaded anything illegally. Of course not. But it took until the early 2000s, mid-2000s, before I really was able to start finding so much more. And since then, it's just grown. But I realize there's stuff I've heard about for years, even some of it decades. I've been aware of bands like Camel, but never got to hear a lot of their music. And now I'm getting to. And there's just a lot of other things I have not caught up on. So there's still a lot more for me to find. And there's new bands and obscure bands all over the place to listen to. And I'm excited about that because I love to explore and love to discover new music. And that's a big thing of what I do. I expand my boundaries, deviate from the norm, try something different. So 2023 brought us Geddy Lee and his biography / memoir, whatever you want to call it. That was very much unexpected and great. I still am working my way through it because I read very slowly and I was finishing up other stuff. But seeing him live for the first time in over 8 years was great and was awesome. Love the guys in Rush. They are, to me, and seem to be such great people. So thrilled to have seen him. And to hear Mike Portnoy reuniting with Dream Theater after 13 years, that was amazing. The fact that somewhere along the line, okay, I guess it was 2022, I got to actually briefly meet Mike Portnoy in person, as coincidence would have it. Wasn't long interaction, unfortunately, but we'll see. But I got a chance to meet and talk to guys in Dream Theater after one of their shows back at the Dream Sonic Tour. That was awesome. First time ever for me, as far as that goes. That I got to hear all these songs suddenly integrating saxophone into the music. There's at least a half dozen of them. And I think that's so awesome. It's not that I am some person dearly in love with saxophone, but it's one of those things that somewhere along the line, the last several years, I really noticed that I can recall so much great use of saxophone and saxophone solos and all that kind of stuff in 80s and 70s rock and thinking, boy, you never hear that anymore. Not in the hard rock, not in the progressive rock, certainly. It just isn't there. And then all of a sudden to hear it making a comeback this year has been so awesome. What a great year for prog, just in that sense. So that's what 2023 has been in the music area. There's been other things going on in my personal life. Not getting into that and boring you with that here now. But yeah, and it makes me happy now to look forward to 2024. So you get to that time of year and you start to think, where is this channel going? Some of you may be curious what I plan to do down the road here in this next year. Well, I do have some plans. One of the biggest ones is, knowing, if you do, that I am a huge Rush fan, that they have always been and probably will always be my favorite band, they will be hitting a milestone in their career, as this year will be the 50th anniversary of the release of their debut album, their eponymous Rush. Also, it will be the 50th anniversary of Neil Peart joining the band. That's when Rush really became Rush as we know them. That's a big deal to me. And I want to do what I can to make this a year of observation and celebration of everything Rush throughout the year. And I'm going to try and do as much as I can with that. We're going to see how successful I am. It's going to put to the test some of my skills in finding and locating contacts and setting things up. Wish me luck. Let's see how it goes. I hope this pans out the way I would like it to. We'll see where that how that happens, how that plays out. Other things I plan to do is add some variety to the types of videos I'm doing. Do some deep dives into some lesser-known progressive and progressive adjacent albums. Kind of a is it a prog, is it not prog thing. Add some reaction vids, though I may focus a bit more than I've done on prog and prog-adjacent artists and songs. We'll see where it is. I've had a fun time digging into the Meshuggah catalog and plan to expand in some other bands' repertoire as far as I can see what else I enjoy by them and what else I might like by them. I like that kind of thing. I like exploring that way. And besides Rush, there are a number of other notable prog anniversaries this year, some of which I hope to also, maybe if I can do it, get members of the bands on the show to just talk about this stuff and chat about these anniversaries and the significance of these albums. Some of the big ones: Dream Theater, Awake turns 30, Metropolis Part 2 turns 25. Big milestones. With any luck, they're touring on one or both of those this year, now that Portnoy's back in the band. That would be awesome. Marillion has 3 albums that are hitting significant milestones this year. Number 1, Marbles, turns 20. Season's End, which is kind of notable because it features the debut of the new guy, Hogarth, turns 35. And Fugazi, 40. So 3 big ones there. You could talk about almost any one of those easily as the others. So that has possibilities for some fun. A couple of albums that are classics hitting the 50-year mark besides Rush's debut would be The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis and Red by King Crimson. Both of those hit the 50-year mark this year. So, yeah, there's some things to talk about besides, hey, what's your new album? What's your tour? Hey, what's your new album? What's your tour? We got some milestones coming up here. And with any luck, I'm going to get some people on and talk about that stuff a bit. I hope it can happen. I'm also going to be working on doing some updates and some tweaks to the overall look and feel of Bleeding Edge in its various forms for something a little bit more cohesive, something a little bit fun, and something a little reflective of the style that Proggy the Progbot brings with him. Stand by for that. That's coming. And hey, as far as The Expanse, big news there. Starting this month, we will be seeing the return, the reemergence, rather, of the Brain Salad Sundays. And for those that didn't hear those or weren't familiar with those from Toxic Radio days, that was when an entire Sunday was devoted to showcasing great progressive rock and metal of all kinds all day long. And that was my little part of the weekly schedule that I carved out with Toxic Mike that allowed me to put the spotlight on that stuff more than just my 2 hours a week for Bleeding Edge. So that was awesome. And I've missed that in some ways because in many ways, The Expanse is exactly what that was, except 24/7. So I've tweaked Brain Salad Sundays. And as you might guess, as I've taken the name from a classic 70s prog album, Brain Salad Sunday, when it starts on The Expanse, will be nothing but 60s and 70s prog all day long. All those classic artists, all those great artists, even the ones that weren't well known in the U.S. but were bigger in the U.K., all day long, all Sunday, We'll move away from any of the metal stuff that some people maybe aren't as attuned to. No growls, no screams, no harsh vocals, just classic 60s and 70s prog, the way you remember it. How awesome is that? So that's something I look forward to, and I'm going to be very glad I can finally do. Took a little while to get it set up, but we're moving forward with it. So I hope that's something you folks out there watching this now would enjoy. So there it is. You get a little bit of information about my past. You're kind of familiar already with my present and certainly the recent past. And you get a little idea of where the future is going for Bleeding Edge and for The Expanse and all things related. And the things that Super Dave here will be doing. All the stuff I've been cooking up here in Progwarts over the last several months. I hope you're excited about that stuff, and know I am. And if you want to follow along on it, the easiest thing to do is, one, if you like the stuff I'm doing, if you can give me a like, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. If you can do the subscribe and hit that bell, then you know when I'm going to be releasing stuff. That would be awesome too. And just follow along for this fun little progressive journey as we expand our boundaries, deviate from the norm, and explore all things Prog and a few things outside of there once in a while, a little bit too. That would be awesome. So for now, that's all I've got for you. As always, this is Super Dave, signing off.